You know, my dear, when I tell people I can still touch my toes at 80, most of them look at me like I've just confessed to dating a movie star. They tilt their heads, raise their eyebrows, and then you can see the gears turning in their minds, wondering if I'm lying or if I've been secretly taking some experimental youth serum. Truth is, the only serum I take is black coffee in the morning, and occasionally a little whiskey at night, just to keep the muscles guessing. Now you, at 60, you're still in what I like to call the danger zone. Not because your age is bad, but because this is the decade where most folks either keep moving or start rusting. And once you start rusting, my dear, it's a full-time job trying to oil the hinges again. I'm talking about joints, muscles, ligaments, all those parts you didn't even know you had until they start complaining. Let me tell you something straight. If you can touch your toes past 70, you are not normal. You're exceptional. Your body is telling the world, hey, I may have been around for 7 decades, but I'm still limber enough to pick up a dropped sock without planning a rescue mission. You know what that means? It means your muscles are still elastic, your spine hasn't turned into rebar, and your circulation is still flowing like a fresh mountain stream. Now, I didn't always know how important that was. Back in my late 60s, I thought flexibility was for dancers, yoga instructors, and people who post pictures of themselves on beaches in ridiculous poses. I was more focused on strength, lifting things, carrying groceries, moving furniture. But one day, when I was 69, I bent down to tie my shoe and realized I was holding my breath like I was about to deep-sea dive. And when I stood back up, I saw stars. That's when it hit me. If I was already struggling at 69, what would I be like at 79 or 89? Would I need one of those grabber tools just to put on my socks? So I made a decision. I started stretching, slowly at first, because let's be honest, the first few times felt like my hamstrings were auditioning for a horror movie. But every morning, I'd reach a little further, breathe a little deeper, and one day, I touched my toes again. And I swear to you, I stood there with my fingers wrapped around my feet, grinning like a lunatic, feeling 40 years younger. I wanted to run outside and tell the neighbors, but I figured they already thought I was eccentric enough. Here's the real kicker. Once you can touch your toes again, other things start improving. My posture straightened, my back stopped aching after long walks, and I even noticed my balance got better. I felt lighter on my feet, almost like my body had been holding on to some invisible weight that stretching finally let go. And let me tell you, the confidence boost was better than any anti-aging cream you'll ever find. But before you think this is just about feeling smug over being flexible, let's talk about what toe touching really represents. It's a sign that your entire posterior chain, that's the line of muscles from your heels all the way up your back, is healthy. And when that chain works well, you move better, stand taller, and even breathe easier. Yes, breathing, because when your hamstrings and back are tight, they pull on your pelvis and ribs, making your chest feel like it's in a corset. Loosen them up, and suddenly your lungs feel like they've been upgraded. Now, I'm not saying you need to become some kind of pretzel-twisting yoga guru. Heck, half the yoga poses out there look like something a drunk uncle would try at a wedding before being escorted out. But the simple act of bending forward and keeping that ability into your later years, that's like passing a secret health exam that most people fail without even realizing it. You want a hook? Here's one for you. I believe your ability to touch your toes after 70 is as important as your blood pressure reading. Yeah, I said it, because both are indicators of how well your body is functioning on the inside. You can hide high blood pressure with pills, but you can't fake flexibility. It's honest. If you can reach down, wrap your fingers around your toes, and come back up without groaning like you're auditioning for a horror film, your body is telling you, we're still young where it counts. Now, I've got to tell you about the day that cemented this belief for me. It was right after my 72nd birthday. I went in for a routine checkup with my doctor, a man who's young enough to be my grandson and smug enough to remind me of it. He asked me how I was feeling, and I said, "Doc, I feel great. In fact, I can still touch my toes." He smirked and said, "All right, prove it." I got up, bent forward, and held my toes for a good 5 seconds. He blinked, then started laughing. "Paul, you know how rare that is? Most of my patients your age can't even see their toes." That's when it hit me. Flexibility isn't just about comfort. It's about standing out in a crowd of creaky joints and stiff backs. It's about telling time, "You can take my hair color, you can take my smooth skin, but you're not taking my mobility." Now you might be thinking, "Paul, I've never been able to touch my toes even in my 30s. Am I doomed?" Absolutely not. Flexibility isn't about some magical genetic gift. It's about training your body slowly and consistently. If you can't touch your toes now, you can still improve. Every inch closer you get is a win, because it's not just about the goal. It's about what your body gains along the way. Better circulation, stronger core, reduced stiffness. Here's another hook to keep you from wandering off. In a bit, I'm going to tell you about the day my ability to touch my toes might have actually saved my life. But before I get there, let's talk about the little everyday victories that come with staying flexible. First off, socks. I know, not glamorous, but being able to put on socks without sitting down or feeling like you're playing Twister with yourself is pure gold at this age. Then there's gardening. I can crouch down, pull weeds, and stand up without needing a crane. Picking up something I dropped. Easy. No hunting for that long stick to push it toward me. And here's a funny one. I was at the grocery store last year, and a jar of pasta sauce rolled under the bottom shelf. Everyone around was looking at it like it had just fallen into a black hole. I bent down, grabbed it, and handed it to a young guy nearby. He looked at me and said, "Whoa, are you like a yoga master?" I told him, "No, kid, I'm just not ready to be old yet." That's the real point, my dear. Being able to touch your toes isn't about showing off. It's about staying in control of your own life. It's about being able to do the little things without pain, without hesitation, without fear of falling or getting stuck halfway. And you, at 60, still have plenty of time to make sure you're one of the rare few who can do it at 80. All right, I've been talking your ear off, but you know me. Once I get rolling, it's hard to stop. Let's make a deal. You stick around for the second half of this chat, and I'll tell you exactly how I got my flexibility back, the surprising benefits I never expected, and yes, that story about how touching my toes might have actually kept me from ending up in the hospital. But before we move on, do me a favor. If you're watching this right now and you're getting even a spark of motivation, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me if you can still touch your toes, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because what I'm about to share might just change the way you think about aging forever. Now, let me take you back a bit, to my 50s and 60s, when I was blissfully ignorant about the ticking clock on my body's flexibility. I was busy living life, chasing work deadlines, chasing my kids around, chasing dreams, and mostly chasing the TV remote after a long day. Stretching? The only thing I stretched was the truth about how many beers I could drink on a Saturday night. But the body doesn't lie. It starts sending you messages, little nudges that something's not quite right. For me, it was my lower back that began whispering complaints. Then it turned into a steady murmur. By the time I hit 65, it was a full-on protest. Getting out of bed felt like trying to escape a bear trap, slow, painful, and suspiciously loud. One winter morning, after a particularly bad bout of stiffness, I realized something had to change. I was still young enough to enjoy retirement, but old enough that ignoring my body could lead to a downhill slide I didn't want to take. So I dusted off an old yoga mat my daughter had bought me 5 years earlier, and which had been used mostly as a clothes rack, and I started exploring stretches, not for flexibility alone, but for survival. The first time I tried to bend forward, I swear my hamstrings screamed louder than a teenager at a rock concert. I felt like I was cracking open like a dried-out peanut shell. But something inside me said, "Keep going, old man," and so I did. Not with some grand plan or fancy routine, just 5 minutes a day of trying, failing, laughing at myself, and trying again. I won't lie, there were days when I thought I was turning into a human pretzel failure. There was one memorable morning when I bent forward, lost my balance, and toppled sideways into the dog's food bowl. The dog gave me a look that clearly said, "You're not as young as you think, Grandpa." I laughed so hard I nearly pulled a muscle. It was humbling, but also hilarious. And that's one of the most important things I've learned. Aging with humor is half the battle. If you can laugh at your creaky knees, your forgetfulness, and your inability to touch your toes, you've already won. Because there's nothing sadder than getting old and losing your smile. Back to the toes. I started noticing something surprising. The better I got at reaching them, the better I felt in other ways. My back pain eased, my balance improved, and my mood brightened. It was as if each stretch sent a message to my body, "We're still in this together." And my body responded with a little more spring in the step and fewer protests. I also started noticing how flexibility helped me in everyday situations. Remember the last time you dropped your glasses or your phone? Did you hesitate before bending down? I did, and that hesitation was dangerous. It made me clumsy, off balance, and sometimes downright afraid of falling. But as my flexibility improved, so did my confidence. I'd bend quickly, pick up whatever was dropped, and stand tall again without wincing. Now, you might wonder, "Paul, isn't this all just physical stuff?" Not quite. There's a mental game here too. Flexibility training requires patience, discipline, and mindfulness. It teaches you to listen to your body, respect its limits, and celebrate its wins, no matter how small. When you reach those toes, you're not just touching your feet, you're touching your soul. Speaking of the soul, let me share something that really touched mine. About a year ago, I was visiting my granddaughter's school. She was in a dance recital, twirling, leaping, and doing all sorts of graceful moves that made me wish I was 20 again. After the show, I joined her backstage, and she asked me to show her my cool moves. I thought about it, and with a grin, bent forward and touched my toes in front of a crowd of teenagers. The look on their faces was priceless. Some of them gasped, others gave me a slow clap. It felt like winning an Olympic medal in a sport I never trained for. And my granddaughter hugged me tight and said, "Grandpa, you're my hero." That moment reminded me how staying flexible wasn't just about my body, it was about inspiring the people I love. Now, I'm not going to pretend every day is perfect. There are mornings when I wake up stiff and grumpy. Days when I'd rather stay in bed and binge watch old westerns than do a single stretch. But those are the days I remind myself, and you should too, that it's okay to have off days. What matters is that you get back up and keep moving. Here's a little secret. Flexibility is the gateway to mobility, and mobility is the gateway to freedom. Freedom to live life on your own terms, freedom to say yes to adventures, freedom to dance at weddings, and yes, freedom to pick up that pesky spoon you dropped without calling for backup. You know what else keeps me motivated? The little challenges. I set tiny goals every week. Reach a little further, hold the stretch a few seconds longer, balance on one leg while brushing my teeth. Sounds silly, right? But those tiny victories add up. They keep me engaged, curious, and feeling young at heart. And here's a truth bomb for you, my friend. When you keep your body young, your mind follows. Studies show that seniors who stay flexible tend to have sharper cognition, better memory, and lower rates of depression. It's like your body and brain are dancing partners, and flexibility is the rhythm that keeps them in sync. All right, before I get carried away, let me bring you back to reality with some good old-fashioned humor. I remember trying a new stretch where you sit on the floor and try to straighten your legs while reaching forward. The first time, I looked like a beached whale flapping in the sun. My wife came in, gave me that look, you know the one, and said, "Are you sure you're not trying to summon a spirit?" I laughed and said, "If the spirit is youth, then yes, I am." All right, now that I've probably embarrassed myself enough, let's talk about some practical tips for you, my dear friend, who's still in the prime time to build flexibility. You don't need fancy classes or expensive equipment. You just need a few minutes a day, a little patience, and the willingness to laugh at yourself. Start simple. Warm up your body by walking around for a few minutes. Then try gentle stretches, touching your toes, reaching for the sky, side bends, calf stretches. Don't push too hard. It's not a competition. Hold each stretch for 20 to 30 seconds and breathe deeply. Consistency is your best friend here. 5 to 10 minutes daily will make a world of difference. And here's a pro tip. Stretch in front of a mirror if you can. Watching yourself move helps you notice habits like rounding your back or holding your breath. Plus, it's fun to see your progress over time. I remember the first time I saw myself in the mirror reaching my toes. I looked surprised like I'd just seen a ghost. All right, before I let you catch your breath, here's a little challenge. Tomorrow morning, when you get out of bed, don't rush to sit up. Instead, lie back, extend your legs, and slowly reach forward to touch your toes or as far as you can go. Hold it, breathe, and smile. That simple act will start rewiring your body and mind for better mobility. Oh, and one more thing. If you're loving this story so far and feel inspired to start your own toe-touching journey, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, comment below on your current flexibility, and subscribe so we can share more stories and tips. Remember, every click is a little victory dance for me. All right, my dear, I think we've stretched enough for one sitting. But wait until you hear part 2, where I dive deep into the specific exercises, mindset shifts, and surprising benefits that help me reclaim my youth one toe at a time. Plus, that life-saving story I promised you, it's coming up, and you don't want to miss it.